do you want to give us a little information about what we've learned today in regards to the shooting that happened yesterday morning?
So 2 16-year-olds were taken into custody and lodged at the Donald E. Long home on the charges of attempted murder in the 2nd degree, 8 counts of that, and then conspiracy and unlawful use of a weapon.
So were these 2 teens randomly just shooting? How does a home get shot with over a dozen bullets?
That'll be part of the investigation, and at this point, investigators don't want to release the information on that. But I guess what we would just really focus on is the vehicle that we're looking for. We can't, like I said, release information on any suspects or details, but we can say that we're looking for the vehicle that has the listed license plate that we really want to track down. One thing of note is that it looks like it has maybe a black wheel on the driver's side or maybe a spare tire, something like that, that would stand out. And so that would be something that even if the license plate isn't on there anymore, it would be something that somebody or a citizen could recognize or a resident would recognize as being the vehicle.
That's helpful. Can you give us information about what sort of trends we're seeing when it comes to youth gun violence? Are we seeing an increase or is it staying the same?
I think we have seen a steady decline in youth violence and violence in general and shootings mostly since COVID, but we have seen periods of time where there's an uptick. And in this case, in 2025, there was a brief period of time, like a couple of weeks, where there was more shootings, and then just in the last couple of weeks there's been more shootings. But overall, it's still a steady decline. But it's concerning, and we take every shooting seriously, and we're working to do prevention on, we're working to investigate those, but we're also working to prevent shootings, and that's something that we really want to highlight at the City of Gresham and the Police Department. Our new ceasefire model is something we're really working on. We're proud of the work that we're doing to prevent shootings from happening in the first place.
I definitely want to ask you about that, but if I may, in regard to the decline in youth gun violence and gun violence in general, I believe someone with the City of Gresham stated that about half of the homicides this year have been of people under the age of 18. Is that an aberration? Is that true?
I don't have the specifics in front of me, but because we have just in general so few homicides, statistics can really, be tricky to say this particular year, if we've, had, just a handful of homicides, every one is super concerning, and we, it's regrettable that there are any homicides. But whereas you have our larger cities that have more significant amount, then you can get more statistical analysis based on just what you see in our case.
Gotcha. And so you were talking about how it kind of ebbs and flows. So right now, would you say we're seeing a little bit of that uptick?
Absolutely. We're seeing an uptick in the last couple of weeks, and we saw an uptick, I think, in February, where we had a couple of weeks, and then it got really quiet. So, obviously we're hoping for a quiet period, and we'd love to see that continue on throughout the year. And we're going to really work with our partners at the city and our community partners to align our community organizations and the work that we're doing to prevent future shootings.
And when you're talking about that uptick, do you mean just generally with gun violence or youth gun violence?
I think it would just be both. We don't really keep data necessarily because a lot of shootings in general are not, we never find out necessarily. If somebody calls and reports a shooting, but nobody comes forward and says, I was shot at or something like that, then we wouldn't really have that data. We know that there are, a lot of instances in this, especially since the COVID period, 2019, where youth are involved in, in gun violence. And any act of gun violence is concerning, and, we just want to address that by, all of the intervention methods that we have, to, use, and everything that we can do to prevent violence, we're here for it.
I want to ask you about prevention. You guys have worked on this ceasefire model. It was announced in January, I believe, like the end of January. Do you want to tell us what the rollout's going to look like and what you guys have been working on?
Sure. So the first thing we do is we have bi-weekly meetings, and those are with sworn law enforcement and specific partners that we work with. Mostly these are police officers and detectives. And that's really to share information, and there are other agencies in the region that participate in that. And then more recently, just in the last month, we started our bi-weekly they're actually the coordination meetings. So just in the last couple of weeks, we started coordination meetings, and those are to share that information with our community partners, the agencies that work, such as POIC, to prevent gun violence. And POIC, as I mentioned, is more commonly known as the agency that, or the organization that started the Rosemary Anderson School. They also do outreach for but youth that are more likely to be involved in violence, specifically gun violence, and also like PDX Underground is an organization that we work with. But there's over 20 organizations that we partner with to prevent and provide resources for violence in general.
I heard that there's also behavioral health resources that are going to be offered through this. That's major. Can you tell us about that?
I don't have the specifics about that, and I would love for you to speak with, I work with Marcel Frazier specifically quite a bit, and he and Iman Ghassemi, they are like my go-to for working with the community organizations, and a lot of times what I do and what our police department does is we send the referrals to them and say, we're worried about this youth because we contacted them, or they were at the scene of a crime or a shooting before, and we're concerned that maybe they would be involved next or something like that. And so we'll reach out to them and they'll provide the resources. So it's not about labels or targeting anybody. It's about just providing resources and making a direct referral through basically our city partners.
And my last question in regards to the ceasefire model, are you guys going to be tracking whether it's working when it comes to crime prevention? And if so, how?
We will be doing, getting data on shootings and or violence in general. And I'm sure since this is all going to be funded partially by the city, but also there'll be state funding and potential grants involved, that'll be part of the process to do a review and see what's working and how we can improve. And so that'll be data-driven statistics, basically data-driven information on how what's going on and are shootings being decreased, and what we can do to improve on that.
And this is a city-funded program?
I believe a lot of this is grant funded through the state, and historically we had a gang team that the city of Gresham, or the Gresham Police Department, and the Multnomah County, they partnered with us on, it was called a gang enforcement team, and we adopted this new model, which is IMOPI, and then now ceasefire, where we are really providing more resources and working to, on a different level, like how can we, instead of just enforcement, how can we interdict on this problem other than enforcing and investigating? We don't just want to investigate crimes that occurred. We want to provide resources for people so they don't turn to crime.